Welcome to this VHF UHF channel, and today we're going to talk a little bit about scanner radios and the different kinds that you find on the market, and also how to get started on the hobby real cheap. And we're going to do a lot of videos for the 30 megahertz and up listening, which is done mostly by scanner radios that you can buy. But there's a way to, one of the things that I like is to try to help people get to the hobby in a very cheap way. So the first video I did actually showed you how to get this little dongle basically. Now you'll need a computer, but this little dongle is less than 10 bucks and you can actually listen to VHF UHF and it will do a great scanner. And it's really not expensive at $10. But what else do you have? You can also get a cheap scanner on eBay. For example, this 30 channel VHF UHF scanner from Uniden I bought for $35 shipping included on eBay. Works fine, and you know what? We'll get you started in the basics of listening to anything on VHF UHF, of course, that is not encrypted. So what do you have? What's the difference between different models and the pricing? Well, usually what happens is the more expensive you get in the scanner radios, the bigger the memory size, so you have more memories to store those frequencies, but also the bigger the frequency range. So this one, for example, that is that I bought for 30 bucks would be the basic scanner. This covers from 30 megahertz up to, well, 29, I think it starts, 29 megahertz, and goes up to 512. So it gets the VHF low and high band, it gets UHF band, but it stops at 512. An example, this one, the Pro 43, is an old friend of mine. This one will get to 800 megahertz, and the 800 megahertz has a lot of stuff today. Depending on where you live, 800 megahertz can actually have most of the communications that you'd like to listen to. What else do you get? You also get these. This one is another old friend of mine, the Pro 92. Radio Shack Pro 92 is a trunk scanner. What's a trunk scanner? A trunk scanner means that it can follow trunk system. Trunk system is basically a computerized way of communicating. Basically, a trunk system is an antenna and a repeater. And you'll get tons of companies on that. And it's kind of a shared system. Instead of having different antennas and repeaters for each services, they'll actually use and rent airtime on a repeater that will share via computer the different frequencies of everybody. And nobody hears nobody else because each company has its own ID, its own identifier that the radio knows, oh, this is a communication for me. So a trunk scanner like this one will be able to follow different types of trunking because there are different companies that make trunking system. And also you'll be able to track a communication. So for example, here if I listen to communications, I can press the trunk button and hold it, and it's going to say, oh, I'm going to follow this identifier. So if, for example, the identifier is the local bus system, the transit system, basically then I'll start following only buses on that frequency range. But you can have all sorts of companies and all sorts of clients using these frequency ranges. So each ID has different companies. So that is the more modern way of actually using a scanner or listening to the VHF UHF spectrum. Lots of communications are trunked. Now, if you don't have a trunk scanner, you can still listen in on these communications. It's just that it's a little more difficult because you have to track down all the frequencies that everybody uses. But on a scanner that scans really fast, I would say that very often you can actually work, listening to trunk stuff, even though sometimes you'll hear something else than intended, but it still can work. You don't necessarily need one, but of course trunking will make it easier to follow your type of communication. If you want to listen to, for example, ambulances in Montreal, Well, the emergency ambulance system basically is trunked. By putting the frequencies here and following a trunk, I'm only following ambulances when I could be following a lot of other stuff. And finally, you've got a last type of receiver, and it's called a communications receiver. A communications receiver is different. It's different because it's meant to receive all sorts of communications. It usually will not have, for example, trunking and stuff like that, but it will have modes that other scanners don't have. For example, these three scanners here are AM and FM only. And you can't, most of the time you can't really choose. It's dependent on frequency and it's pre-programmed. This one will have on the other side AM, FM, Morse code, upper, lower sideband modes, and all independent. Another thing about communications receiver is, for example, the step size when scanning. Here it's pretty much fixed. It's pre-programmed. Here you have a choice of, all sorts of tuning steps. It's really, everything is almost programmable in here. And because of that versatility, because the fact that it can actually tune in such different ranges, different steps, and different modes, it's gonna actually make you hear communications you won't never hear on these. So like amateur radio operators and that use sideband, or amateur radio satellites, a lot of them are heard here because they use modes like single sideband or Morse code that you can't really hear on these because they're not made for that. Usually communications receiver also often have very big and very wide ranges. So this one ranges from 150 kilowatts in the medium, long wave band, way down, up to 3,304 megahertz. That's 3.3 gigahertz. So it's a very wide band receiver. Communications receivers also will have very often all sorts of little bells and whistles. This one has a possibility, for example, to listen to two frequencies at the same time. So when I put dual watch, you see here it's actually listening to two frequencies, like you're having two radios next to each other in the same one. Of course, there's band scopes that you can check for signals, and there's a lot of other possibilities, and that's the difference between a communications receiver. It's meant to be used at the basics of a scanner, but with added bonus of much more communications because of all the bells and whistles that are added to it, and they're usually more expensive. And but of course, at the base, this little dongle that I've shown in another video, for 10 bucks, this thing will do what this thing does. It is a communications receiver, but it uses a computer. So you need a computer to have the interface to change the frequency, the modes, but it will add the possibility of a wideband receiver with all the modes, all the bells and whistles that you need, and even more because a computer is programmable, and the software will add very often all sorts of little details, including recording and so on. This one has a recorder, so I can record all the things I listen to, but still, it's more flexible with this. Another thing that's interesting with one like this communications receiver is I can actually plug it in the USB port of my computer, send the audio files, the frequency, stuff like that. It also can be controlled by a computer if I want. So these are the different things that you can have. Different prices, of course, they'll range from, like I told you, 10 bucks for this. This used, 25, 30 bucks. Check eBay. You can have nice little scanners for not too expensive sometimes. You have to just, look regularly. And of course you have the scanners and the trunks that are more expensive. You'll get more into the $300, $400, $500 for a radio. This one, communications receiver R20, I think it's discontinued for 2016, but will range in $600 or $700. So that's the offer you have, and that's what you can actually use. So we'll be, of course, posting more videos as time comes by. Hope you subscribe and hope you enjoy the videos. Give us thumbs up.